So as I said in the previous part, the inference that is arrived, the conclusion that is arrived at through the inferential process, the 5-step inferential process, should avoid any sort of fallacies. So let us try and see what are all the different types of fallacies. 5 of them are very popular and are mentioned in the Nyaya Sutra. We will take the same and try to understand what they are. The first one is vyabhichara, or the hetu, or the reason which is straying here and there. The nature of this fallacy is that from the same reason one can derive two conclusions which are contradictory. Okay, so the reason supports the hypothesis A, it also supports the hypothesis not A. So if you take an example, maybe it will be a little clearer. Supposing I give an argument of this form, X is a non-metal because it is solid. Okay, so my main reason is that it is solid. So X is solid, therefore it is not a metal. So but the fallacy that this argument makes is that solidity is found both in metals as well as in non-metals. So based on the same reason that X is solid, I can come to the conclusion that it is non-metal. I can also come to the conclusion that it is a metal. So solidity is not a sufficient condition to say that X is a non-metal. Another example of this kind of a fallacy is, supposing I give the argument that penguins can fly because they are birds. From the reason that it is a bird, I want to establish that it can fly. But being a bird is a property which occurs both in flighted things as well as in non-flighted things. So for example, in ostrich or kiwi, etc., they are also birds, but they cannot fly. So there is the reason, from the same reason you can arrive at two contradictory conclusions. So that kind of a hetu is called a vyabhichara hetu, and therefore if an argument uses that kind of a hetu, it is fallacious. The second kind of fallacy is viruddha. The reason actually proves the contradiction of what you intended to prove. So this is instead of proving A, it has proved not A. So for example, if I say X is a metal because it does not conduct electricity. So this is a case of straightforward case of viruddha or contradiction, wherein the reason establishes that X is a non-metal. So from the reason that it does not conduct electricity, you can say that it is a non-metal. It proves that it is non-metal. It does not prove that it is a metal. There may be some metals which are poor conductors, but please notice I am saying here that it does not conduct electricity at all. So it doesn't prove what is intended, and in fact goes on to prove the contradiction of what is intended. So this kind of a fallacy is called viruddha. The third kind of fallacy is prakarana sama, or circular reasoning. This is the kind of reasoning in which the reason that you have offered has done nothing to remove the doubt in the mind of the hearer. So it is same as it retains the level of doubt in the same way. That is why it is called prakarana sama. So equal to the initial hypothesis. So supposing I give an argument of this sort, sound is non-eternal because it does not possess the attributes of eternality. Now saying that it does not possess the attributes of eternality is same as saying that it is non-eternal. So what you have done is that you have in some way twisted the conclusion itself, or what you want to prove itself, as part of your, you have fitted it as part of your reason. So this kind of a circular argumentation which does not do anything to remove the initial doubt is called prakarana sama. The fourth kind of fallacy is sadhya sama. So just to recap, sadhya is that which you want to prove. So in the standard example that we had taken, supposing I see the smoke somewhere, and based on that I want to infer fire, the fire is the sadhya. Okay, and when you say sadhya sama, it means that the reason that you have given is equally unproved as the sadhya itself. So the reason itself requires proof. Now forget about using it to prove something else. First of all, you have to prove that itself. So supposing I say that planet X has an atmosphere because it has water. Now what I want to prove is that planet X has atmosphere. On the basis of what do I want to prove that? That it has water. But I have no proof that planet X has water. So I am taking something which itself requires proof in order to prove something else. So that kind of an argument which uses an unproved hetu is called sadhya sama. The last kind of fallacy is kalatita, mentioned in the Nyaya Sutra. It has received different interpretations in different hands, but as mentioned by the Nyaya Sutrakara, it is that the reason is no longer relevant to the conclusion that you want to prove. It is not synchronized with the conclusion that you want to prove. later on it was taken or understood as something which is contradicted by a later at a later point in time. So, kala, the word as you can read it, means time. So, some people understood it as an argument which was, or the conclusion which was contradicted by a later point of time, observation which was done at a later point of time. But as we find it in the Nyaya Sutra, it is the reason which is no longer synchronous with what is to be proved. The reason is mistimed, or it is late compared to the conclusion. So, the example that I have taken here is that the electron is at position XYZ, let us say, because it was observed there. So, I have taken this example because as soon as when you say that an electron is observed, it means that a photon has hit it and come back, but because a photon has hit it, the electron must have gone elsewhere. This is that Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We can never have the position as well as the momentum of these particles at the same time. So, when you say that electron is at the position XYZ because it was observed there, when you are making this statement, the electron is no longer there. So, because of being hit by that photon, by the time itself it had gone off elsewhere. So, you have observed this, it means that it was there at some point in time. So, this kind of a hetu which is not in sync with the conclusion that is given. Sync means which is not in the same time as the conclusion, that kind of a fallacy is called kalatita. So, an argument that you put forward, an anumana that you put forward must be devoid of all of these fallacies. So, later authors, different darshanas identified the different kinds of fallacies also. Certain subcategories were identified within each of these categories, but overall as the Nyaya Sutra identifies, these are the 5 kinds of fallacies. So, in general the lesson is that whenever we advance an argument in a knowledge creation process, we should make sure that our argument is not containing any of the logical fallacies. So, this is the moral that we can take from the Nyaya framework. Now, once we establish a conclusion by following the systematic 5-step procedure and avoiding all the fallacies, etc., we will come to something called as a siddhanta, an established tenets. What are the different types of siddhanta? We will try to see in the next part.